I blinked. You want me to train my replacement? You'd think after 39 years of loyal service, they'd at least have the decency to do it behind closed doors. But no, they did it in a glass conference room, mid-afternoon, with coffee still hot on the table. Karen from HR gave me that professional smile, the kind that gets tighter the longer you look at it. Not train, necessarily, she said, but we'd love your support during this transition. Across the table, Tanner adjusted his stupid little bracelet and nodded. We just want to download some of your legacy knowledge while you're still around. I'd spent 39 years building this firm's most complex structural systems, mentoring half the people in the room, and now I was Google Drive. Karen went on, something about sunsetting legacy roles, and agility-focused transitions. A lot of elegant words meant to soften one truth: I was being pushed out at 62 because I made too much, thought too slow, and didn't use Slack emojis. I glanced at Tanner again. 29, maybe 30. Hair gel, wide smile, and enough confidence to get lost in. He was still wearing AirPods, not even pretending to listen. Of course, I said finally. Happy to help. You could hear the collective exhale around the table. Karen smiled, relieved. Tanner leaned back like the whole thing was a formality. I was just the last box on his onboarding checklist. I stood up, buttoned my blazer. I'll start putting together some documentation. Back in my office, the one with my degrees on the wall and a window that took 22 years to earn, I started packing. Not because I had to. I had 2 weeks left. But I didn't want to see how fast Tanner moved into my chair. Photos. Old project awards. A retirement card someone gave me 10 years too early. Halfway through boxing up, Tanner strolled in like he owned the place. Hey Dean, he said, standing in the doorway like it was his already. Karen said you'd be showing me around. I motioned to a chair, kept my voice steady. Let's start with load path documentation and region-specific seismic code compliance. He gave me a blank look. Yeah, I was thinking we'd start with something more strategic. Maybe skip the dusty stuff. I just stared at him. He grinned like we were old pals. No offense, man. I just figure we're due for a refresh. Might even archive most of that older documentation, I'll probably redesign it anyway. There it was. That small, clean-cut humiliation. He wasn't just replacing me. He was deleting me. I said nothing. I just handed him a binder and let him flip through 2 pages before his eyes glazed over. The rest of the week played out like a slow-motion funeral. People came by, awkward and overly cheerful. Hey Dean, heard the news. Big changes, huh? Big changes. Yeah. Like replacing a bridge with duct tape and saying it's agile. Every night I came home to the same silence. My wife passed away 4 years ago. Cancer, quick, cruel, unfixable. The house felt too quiet now. Friday night, my daughter Annie stopped by after her shift at the hospital. I brought Chinese, she said, nudging open the door with her elbow. She spotted the box by the hallway table. What's that? I didn't answer right away. They let me go, I said eventually. Told me my role's being sunset. She froze. What? They're shifting to a leaner, more tech-forward model. Annie dropped the food bag harder than she meant to. You're the reason that company survived the 2008 collapse. You kept them solvent when the State Street Tower almost failed inspection. They can't just. They did. She sat down hard. Jesus, Dad. Are you okay? I nodded. It's not personal. The hell it's not. Her eyes were flashing now. They're using you. Making you train the guy replacing you. That's disgusting. You should sue them. I let out a breath. What would be the point? To show them they can't treat people like this. To stop this happening to the next guy. Her voice cracked halfway through. That's when I realized, she was angrier than I was. I can't believe you're just taking this. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of watching me fight. She stared at me, confused. I shrugged. If I made a scene, they'd spin it. Say I was bitter. Uncooperative. Maybe even unstable. I'm leaving with my dignity. That's more than they deserve. Annie looked down, fists clenched. You're better than them. You always were. I didn't say anything. But her words stayed with me. Monday, I showed up at 8 a.m. sharp. Tanner rolled in at 9:20, Starbucks in hand, and asked if I could just forward the CAD files for the Preston Library restoration. I turned in my chair. You mean the initial review packet? Yeah, whatever that is. He slurped his drink. Karen wants to submit the proposal by Thursday. I almost laughed. Tanner, that site's a Category 3 historical landmark. You can't submit generic materials. You need seismic history, material integrity tests, and a report signed off by both state and federal agencies. He blinked. Wait, that's required? I nodded. He looked at me like I'd just told him his Tesla ran on coal. I could have handed him the folder right then. Could have saved him. Instead, I handed him a single line. Try starting with the archival property survey. Good luck. The next few days were like watching someone perform surgery with salad tongs. Tanner interrupted one of my exit meetings to ask if ChatGPT could generate a standard retrofit plan. I told him sure, if he didn't mind it getting flagged by every compliance officer in the state. Later that afternoon, I caught him in the break room bragging to someone in marketing. Dean's old school, but I'll have this place paperless by Q3. He'd been here a week. Karen was eating it up, praising him for his leadership initiative. She didn't even notice that 3 of our core project files hadn't been touched. Or that the regional zoning database login was still only in my name. I watched it all unfold like a man at his own funeral, nodding politely while people argued about the flowers. That Friday, I packed the last of my things. I turned in my badge, shook a few hands, and gave Tanner one last tight smile when he said, "Hope you enjoy retirement." I didn't correct him. I wasn't retiring. Not yet. As I stepped into the elevator, I didn't feel sad. Or angry. Or defeated. I felt curious. About how long it would take before the gears started jamming. About how long it would take before someone realized that the foundation of the firm wasn't concrete or code. It was me. And I just walked out the door. They sent out a company-wide email the Monday after I left. Subject line, Legacy Staff Transition Completed. I wasn't even listed by name. Just lumped in with previous contributors. No mention of the 39 years. No farewell photo. No quote. Nothing. Just a paragraph about Tanner leading a new era of cloud-based collaboration and digital-first project leadership. That was my obituary. I read it on my porch, sipping the same coffee I used to drink on my 6 a.m. commute. And for a second, I felt nothing. Just silence. Then my phone buzzed. Annie. Annie, did you see the email? Me, I did. Annie, they called you a transition. Like a software update. Me, I guess I was version 1.0. She didn't respond right away. Then finally. Annie, you built that firm, and they erased you like a typo. I didn't go on LinkedIn. Didn't update my status. But other people did. Tanner had posted a photo of himself in front of a half-finished 3D rendering with the caption. Excited to modernize the Preston Library project with fresh eyes and agile tools. It's a new day at Rowan and Haynes. Fresh eyes. Preston was a century-old landmark. There were no shortcuts. No off-the-shelf plugins or prefab templates that could pass historic preservation standards. He was treating it like a school project. I forwarded the post to no one. I didn't comment. But I saved the screenshot. Later that week, Annie came by. She'd started checking in like clockwork. I knew it was half daughterly concern, half covert recon. "You heard what happened to Cynthia?" she asked, setting down takeout on my kitchen counter. "Cynthia from electrical?" She nodded. "Laid off. After 27 years. I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, no severance?" 2 weeks. HR told her she didn't fit the new leadership model. I chewed slowly, thinking. Cynthia had worked on some of our highest compliance projects, airport terminals, hospitals, bridge retrofits. She had over 40 certifications and was one of the only people in the office who understood emergency compliance routing inside and out. They weren't just replacing people. They were amputating knowledge. Annie was watching me. "You know that means Tanner's touching the electrical coordination on Preston, right?" I paused. "That project requires dual authority sign-off for code exceptions. If he doesn't." "I know," she said. "You're not the only one who read the fine print." She waited, hoping I'd say something. Plot something. React. But I just poured another cup of coffee. She finally muttered, "You're going to let them burn, aren't you?" I took a slow sip. Fires reveal weak foundations. On Thursday, I walked into a hardware store and ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. Dean. It was Paul Brinkley, former fire marshal and now a third-party inspector for state-funded buildings. "I thought you'd be buried in Preston files this time of year," he said. I smiled. "They sunset my role. Brought in new blood." Paul chuckled, then paused. "You serious?" "Not kidding." He scratched his head. "That explains it." "Explains what?" He leaned closer. "Preston's initial plans came across my desk yesterday. No fire corridor schematics. No alt-exit models. And get this, the guy leading it sent the wrong CAD files." "Wrong how?" "They were from an elementary school in Indiana. Completely different specs. When I called him, he said, and I quote, 'Oh, they looked similar.'" I didn't flinch. Paul narrowed his eyes. "This kid doesn't know what he's doing. If something goes sideways, the city's going to have to pull the plug on approvals." I patted his shoulder. "Well, I'm sure they'll figure it out." I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, I paused. "Hey, Paul." "Yeah. If anything else seems off on Preston, you know where to find me." That night, I got a voicemail from someone I hadn't heard from since 2013. "Dean, this is Grace Whitman, City Review Board. I know you're probably enjoying some well-earned rest, but I'd love to pick your brain. I'm reviewing something you used to oversee and, pause, I think we both know it's not quite right." I didn't call her back. Not yet. Let them wonder where I went. By week 3, Tanner was on his 4th internal newsletter. This one featured a quote from the client, someone I'd worked with for over a decade. "Tanner's team has brought fresh clarity and confidence to a project that was previously stuck in outdated methodologies." Outdated methodologies. I'd rebuilt that entire library concept to pass federal compliance under budget. The client who said that? He once cried in my office because we saved his funding from collapse. Now he was praising the kid who submitted elementary school plans. That one stung. Not because I needed the recognition, I'd long given up on that, but because it showed me something deeper. They weren't just forgetting me. They were rewriting the narrative. And they were doing it fast. I spent a few hours digging through my old email archives. Logged into a private backup account I used for client-side coordination. Nothing sneaky. Nothing confidential. Just receipts, project timelines, correspondence, consultant lists, and every version of Preston's pre-approval drafts. I stared at the files for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I printed them. On real paper. Annie showed up unannounced Saturday morning. "You're too quiet," she said. "Even for you." I handed her a folder. She flipped through the pages. "This is Preston's entire foundation compliance plan," she said. Hand-labeled, annotated. "Wait, is this the emergency ductwork redesign you did for the budget shortfall?" I nodded. She looked up at me. "Why are you showing me this?" "I'm not showing you anything." She frowned. "Then who?" I smiled. "I'm just making sure someone has a copy. Just in case." Sunday night, I got a text from someone unexpected. "Beth, former junior analyst, now under Tanner." "Beth, off the record, he's starting to panic." "Me, why?" "Beth, he submitted a compliance report with conflicting HVAC and emergency egress specs." Grace kicked it back. "Again." "Me, that'll happen." "Beth, he's asking if anyone has your old notes. HR said you left nothing behind." I stared at the message for a moment. Then typed. "Me, tell him the notes were sunset." That night, I went out back to fix the gate. The wind had knocked it loose during the last storm. It wasn't hard to fix, just needed a new hinge and a steadier foundation. I stood there a long time afterward, looking out over the yard. From the outside, it looked like I was settling into retirement. No drama. No posts. No emails. No lawsuits. Just a quiet man drinking his coffee, fixing his gate. But that's the thing about gates. They keep things out. And they also let the right things in, when the time's right. The first sign that Tanner was flailing came from Beth. She texted me out of nowhere. "Beth, he just canceled the compliance review with the city." No explanation. "Beth, meeting was at 2 o'clock. He walked out at 1:45. "Beth, not great optics." I didn't reply. But I smiled. A few days later, Rowan and Haynes had their internal town hall. They streamed it like they always did, glass conference room, standing mics, branded coffee mugs. Tanner stood front and center. Collared shirt. Rolled sleeves. Polished smile. The screen behind him read, "Future-proofing Preston, Agile Reimagining." Somewhere near the 20-minute mark, he started talking about load-bearing floor plate flexibility. That's when it happened. He pointed at a slide. A system I had designed nearly 14 years ago. And he got it wrong. Not just a detail, the entire function. He claimed it was designed to redirect torsion around the foundation. It wasn't. It was built to absorb it. A junior engineer raised her hand. "Sorry, wasn't that system developed to work with torsional pressure, not around it?" Tanner blinked. Well, it's somewhat dynamic, depending on." He looked around the room, and then his eyes landed on me. I was sitting in the back row. Silent. He hadn't seen me come in. The silence stretched a little too long. Someone near the front turned to see what he was staring at. I just gave him a polite, knowing nod. He cleared his throat. "We'll circle back on that." Later that day, I got another message from Beth. "Beth, you just broke him." Me, I didn't say a word. Beth, exactly. The tension wasn't just behind the scenes anymore. It was on faces. In meetings. In posture. People used to light up around Tanner. Now they braced for him. A week after the town hall, I overheard two former colleagues at a hardware store, one aisle over, arguing about PVC versus copper, drop into a whisper. He screamed at the printer last week. Printer? Yeah. Literally shouted at it. Whole floor heard. Jeez. He's not sleeping. And he keeps asking if anyone's heard from Dean. The cracks widened quickly after that. Tanner's next submission to the city got flagged for duplicated load paths. 2 paths. Same direction. Full redundancy. That's not just sloppy, that's dangerous. City planning issued a formal request for revision. But what made it worse? They CC'd Karen. That was public. Deliberate. A warning shot. Karen left me a voicemail that night. Hey, Dean. If you're free sometime this week, maybe we could meet. I think some of the systems you designed might not have full documentation, and there are a few things only you would have known how to explain. Just 15 minutes. Doesn't have to be formal. Thanks. No apology. No mention of what they did. But I heard it in her voice. They were afraid. Not of me, exactly, but of what was unraveling without me. Annie stopped by a few days later. I know that face, she said, dropping onto the porch swing. That's the everything's going to plan face. I didn't answer. She looked at me hard. You think you're in control. But if this all crashes and the city starts asking questions, they'll look for someone to blame. I'm not involved. They don't know that. She leaned in. And if they find even one version of a system they think you left broken, they'll hang this on you, not Tanner. I didn't flinch. But the warning landed. Not because I was worried. But because it reminded me just how desperate they might get. That night, Beth messaged me again. Beth, you're not the only one who remembers what it used to be. That was it. No context. No follow-up. 2 days later, I got the envelope. No return address. No sender. Just a manila folder on my porch with a USB drive inside, and one sentence on a folded note. For when the foundation really starts to crack. Inside the drive. Scanned documents, redlined memos, meeting transcripts, time-stamped edits, all from Rowan and Haynes' internal network. Things Tanner should have checked. Conflicts he should have caught. A paper trail of arrogance. Who sent it? I didn't know for sure. But I had a guess. The next morning, Grace Whitman called. First time in years. I'm not asking you to come back, she said. But we both know that place is headed for a train wreck if someone doesn't explain what Tanner's screwing up. Doesn't sound like my problem, I replied. It is if you want your name off the fallout. That gave me pause. Just tell me one thing, she said. Did you design the egress contingency with double-back corridors or cross-venting? I smiled. Depends which version they submitted. She groaned. You're enjoying this. Enjoying the clarity. On Friday, I received a link from a client I used to work with. No subject. Just the message, thought you'd appreciate this. It was a clip from a podcast, an engineering industry show, with a guest who'd recently turned down a bid from Rowan and Haynes. I've worked with their old team before, the guest said. Real sharp. But now. Feels like they handed the keys to a kid who read one book and thinks he wrote it. The host laughed. Yikes. The guest added, if they want to play with legacy projects, they should probably talk to the guy who built them. That weekend, Annie and I sat outside again. It had started to rain, soft, steady, and she was watching me with that same sideways look. You're not going to stop this, are you? I looked out toward the street. They had 39 years of my work, my knowledge, my patience. All they had to do was respect it. But they tossed it like a spreadsheet, and now they're shocked it's broken. She crossed her arms. And you? You didn't toss anything. I shook my head. I left them everything they asked for. They just never asked the right questions. She exhaled. Not disappointed. Not exactly proud. Just, accepting. "You're not fixing the back gate anymore, are you?" she asked. "No," I said. "I already fixed that." Monday morning, I took a walk past the Rowan and Haynes office. I didn't go in. Didn't slow down. Just looked through the glass. Inside, I saw Tanner at the conference table, arms raised, palms up, clearly mid-apology. Karen sat across from him, arms crossed, not impressed. Beth was at her desk. She looked up. Saw me through the window. She didn't wave. Just gave a small nod, like a soldier spotting another in the field. They were panicking. I hadn't done anything overt. Hadn't made a single move publicly. Hadn't said a word about revenge. But their system was buckling. And I was still standing. The first real crack in the firm's wall wasn't visible to most people. It came quietly, just a routine message in the firm's intranet portal, marked, "For internal review only." But inside that little PDF was a list. Not a list of problems, exactly, not yet, but a list of discrepancies. Misaligned CAD files. Missed submission deadlines. Subcontractor insurance that had lapsed 6 weeks earlier. And at the very bottom, a flagged warning from the city planning office, pending suspension of municipal permits on Preston. The partners probably thought they could handle it quietly. A couple of corrections, maybe a shuffled blame game, let Tanner sweat a little and buy themselves some time. But they didn't realize something yet, something I had known before I ever handed over my badge. The mess Tanner made wasn't isolated. It wasn't a loose bolt or a missed form. It was rot in the foundation. He didn't just mess up Preston, he had unknowingly tripped every wire I had spent years rigging to warn us when the system was close to failing. And now that I was gone, there was no one left to hear the alarm. By Friday morning, the fallout went public. The city issued a formal press release suspending all active permits tied to Preston. Funding froze immediately. The client pulled back. Investors retracted. And just like that, the project was dead. No press conference. No bold headlines. Just silence, and the faint sound of chairs moving behind closed boardroom doors. That same day, Grace, the planning commissioner I'd spoken to so often over the years, gave a short quote to the local press. It read like a dagger wrapped in velvet. "We value innovation, but experience still matters." This situation highlights what happens when that experience is dismissed too quickly. No one mentioned Tanner by name. But no one had to. The article didn't trend nationally. It didn't go viral. But inside our world, among contractors, developers, municipal offices, and engineering firms across the state, it made noise. Suddenly everyone remembered who had been holding up that building, and who had let it slip. On Monday, I got an envelope in the mail. Rowan and Haynes letterhead. Cream stock. Karen's handwriting on the bottom in fountain pen. "If you're open to consulting, even unofficially, we'd value your input." It was signed with just her first name, no title. I read it twice, then placed it in the drawer next to my passport. I never called her. A week later, I saw Tanner again, and this time, it wasn't on some website or secondhand rumor. He was at the coffee shop near the office, the one they all used to order from when we were pulling back-to-back reviews. I stepped in for a quiet espresso. He was already there, sitting alone at a high top, looking like someone who hadn't slept in a week. I wouldn't have approached him. But when he looked up and saw me, he froze. For a second, I thought he might actually duck. Instead, he stood awkwardly, brushing crumbs off his shirt. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in presence. The confidence was gone. "Dean," he said. Just that. No smile. No spin. I nodded once. "Tanner." He motioned at the stool across from him. You want to sit? I'm good, I said, staying upright. He looked down at his cup. You probably heard. I heard. They're reassigning the project. Might lose the client completely. Probably the whole phase 2 deal. I read that too. He paused, eyes flicking up. They let me go. End of last week. I let that hang in the air between us. I'm, between things, I guess. He gave a hollow laugh, then said, you probably saw they already updated the team page. I'm not even on the org chart anymore. I nodded. LinkedIn stripped too. That one hit him. He actually flinched. Yeah. That was fast. He reached for his coffee again but didn't drink. I didn't know how much you were doing. Honestly. I thought I'd just take your files, your logins, step into the role. I thought systems were just systems. They're not, I said. He took a deep breath, then looked right at me. Did you do it? I tilted my head. Do what? All of it. The documents. The city. That audit. The way the internal files surfaced right before the review. Did you set me up? For a moment, I considered denying it, or brushing it off. But I didn't. I just stared at him for a long time, then said calmly, you asked me to train you. Not to teach you. He blinked, unsure. I leaned in slightly. I gave you the basics. The procedures. The templates. What you didn't ask for were the unwritten systems. The instinct. The 10,000 quiet decisions that keep everything from tipping over. You thought the files were the job. But the job was me. Tanner swallowed hard, and for the first time in all the years I'd known him, he looked like someone who understood consequences. And in that moment, I couldn't help it, I smiled. Not big. Not cruel. Just a flicker of something real. Because after all this time, all the silence, all the restraint, watching him finally feel it. That landed. That was the release. He didn't say anything else. Just sat back down, deflated. I turned and walked out. Back at home, Annie was waiting on the porch, holding 2 coffees and wearing that look she got when she'd been reading everything online for hours. She didn't ask if I'd seen Tanner, she already knew. They're saying he uploaded an outdated mechanical file from a different state. It failed a city inspection, she said, handing me the cup. He did. She looked at me sideways. That wasn't your file, was it? I shrugged. I never touched the system again after I logged out. I didn't have to. She sat beside me, quiet for a minute. Then she said, you always said silence can be louder than words. I looked at her, surprised. That was something I used to say when she was a teenager, when her mother passed, when we sat together through long stretches of grief. I didn't expect her to remember. You knew what you were doing, she said. You didn't sabotage him. You just let the cracks show. Eventually, everything that's unstable collapses, I said. All I did was stop holding it up. She sipped her coffee, and for a moment, I thought I saw her eyes glisten. But she smiled and changed the subject, like she always did when things got too real. The next day, I went for a walk downtown. I passed Rowan and Haynes' building without meaning to. Same glass walls. Same spotless lobby. Only this time, I was the one on the outside, coffee in hand, watching a new intern sprint down the hallway with blueprints fluttering behind him. Inside the conference room, someone was pointing at a 3D model of a new structure, confused. I could tell. The body language gave it away. I didn't stop. Just kept walking. Later that afternoon, I ended up back at the library. The old one. The one I helped design back in 2004. Still standing. Still balanced. I sat in the back corner with a blank notepad and a pencil. I started sketching something simple, just a frame, a load path, something my hands remembered before my mind did. A minute in, I realized my hand was trembling. Not from fear. Not from anger. But from release. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt weightless. Not empty, just done. I set the pencil down and looked out the window. It was a clear day. Quiet. Still. That's when it hit me. I never raised my voice. I never leaked a document. I never lifted a finger. All I did was stop holding up the parts they never noticed. And they collapsed all by themselves.